Hello. I wanted to provide this video for you as a reference and as a guide as you're working on your programming practices assignments in this course to help guide you along as you work through them, submit them, and receive credit for them. You're going to want to have a few different tabs or windows open as you work on these. The first one would be Canvas. In our Canvas site for the course, you're going to see all the various learning modules and assignments. And let's say you were going to be working on the first programming practice assignment, PP01. Once it's unlocked, you would be able to click on it, and it looks like a quiz in Canvas, but it's not really a quiz. You have an unlimited amount of time to work on it and submit it. You have an unlimited number of attempts on it. It's a way for us to track the programs that you've worked on and to give you credit for having completed them successfully. Each of these assignments are going to look fairly similar in terms of format here. For each of the programming practices, there's going to be 5 different programs you're going to be working on. So for PP01 here, it'll be PP01.01 through .05 will be the 5 that you'll be working on. And each of them are going to be requesting that you're providing a submission code for them. So that is the Canvas interface for these assignments. That's the first window you're going to want to have open. The second window I recommend having open would be the actual Replit page itself for the course. Assuming you've been added to our class and you've clicked the sign in link for it, you'll have a listing not just of the individual assignment you're interested in, but actually all of the code we've had for the class or will have for the class. All the different programming practices, all the different in-class programs will all be provided for you there. The assumption is that you'll be going kind of sequentially in order through these. We are trying to scaffold from relatively basic concepts to more advanced concepts as we go. And I think you'll be more successful if you progress through these in the intended order. So let's assume as you're getting started, you're starting on that first programming practice assignment. You could actually click on PP01.01 ISU Facts. I had already clicked on it, so on my screen it'll show up as continue working. Yours may show up as start project. And all of these projects are going to look pretty similar in terms of their format. There'll be some starter code, usually main.c file. And that main C file, depending on the program, may provide a lot of starter code, a little starter code, or maybe just a couple of hints along the way. The other file is basically the instructions. It's a readme.md or markdown file, and that file is meant to explain what the purpose of this project is, what the expected output should be, and then as they start to get a little bit more complex, a number of hints will usually be provided near the bottom. I do want you to read those hints carefully as you go through these assignments. Usually you want to read through that entirety before you get started and before you start writing any code. So we have the code window here on the left. We have the view of the README window here on the right. And between the two, you're supposed to be working on the program and figuring out what the program is supposed to do. Before we come back to that, the third tab I recommend having open would just be some sort of text editor or Google Doc. And this would be there for you to just keep track of your notes as you're working on it. What things did you try? What things worked? What things didn't work? What kinds of compiler or runtime or other errors or issues you're seeing. And I would actually, as we generate the submission codes for these programs, before worrying about uploading them all into Canvas, I would just quickly copy paste them into here as we'll see. You'll have them handy. You can do your entire Canvas submission all at once and not have to worry about doing one, then coming back and doing a second and coming back and so forth. Back to our Replit window here, we have our C code, our initial C code here on the left. We have our README file here on the right. And there's other controls here on the left that we're using. The two main controls that are most important for your assignments is this first one, which is the listing of files, and this one at the very bottom with the check mark, that is our tests for each program. To successfully complete a program, you have to do 3 things. The first maybe is obvious. You have to write a program that works, that meets the expected objective for that program, that generates the correct result. The second part is you actually have to pass the tests that I have provided for each program. These are like unit tests. You could think of them as input-output tests. For some of these programs, they'll just be one test. Certainly for our starter ones, as they're relatively straightforward, the starter test will just be, does your code print out what I would like the program to print out? As they get a little bit more advanced, you'll have multiple tests. I think it's never more than about 10 tests for any given program, but as there's different inputs you'll be processing, different edge cases to maybe concern yourself with as you're working on the program, There'll be additional tests that each of these programs would be expected to test. But for this one, for this first example, there's just a single input output test. You can actually click on the test and it'll tell you what the test is. Is there any input? In case there is no input here, if we're just spitting out some output in this first few programs we have here. And here is what the output should be. It's not the most user-friendly format. We could typically take the input, copy paste, and actually input that ourselves to see what the output would look like a little bit better. But what is very useful about this testing mechanism here is you can actually then go and just run the test. This will run, if there's multiple, all of the tests associated with your program, and it'll tell you specifically where your program is not generating the right result. So for this example here, we get failed. Well, that sounds bad. You're going to be getting a lot of failed until you eventually get the green of success. When you see that failed, you can click on the results tab here, and it'll tell you specifically for what it was hoping you'd be printing out for the program, what your code is printing out, and where it detects a difference. Let me tell you, and let me, I guess, warn you right now, these tests are very, you can call them sensitive or precise or exacting. If you have an additional space, it will catch that. If you used a capital I instead of a lowercase I, it will catch that. It will tell you exactly where it found the error, and usually those kind of bugs aren't that hard to fix, but it will find all of those bugs for you. And for this very first program, it's already functional. It already prints out what it's supposed to print. Just logically, it's incorrect because it's printing out some things that aren't actually correct here. And in fact, that test will tell us itself where things were wrong. It says the school was founded in 2004. That's not quite correct. The school was founded in 1858. If I go through and then hit run tests here, it'll still be wrong, but at least it'll tell us that, okay, that first part that was wrong is no longer wrong. It's still seeing a few other issues here. Let's catch the other ones. Might be easier. We can go to the Wikipedia page. But just reading through it, we may be able to catch these bugs ourselves without even reading the Wikipedia page from which this text is based. Iowa State University of Science and Technology, Iowa State, is a public land grant research university in Iowa City, Iowa. Well, that part's not correct. We can change that to Ames. University by total enrollment in the Big 10 athletic conference. We're in the Big 12, at least for now, athletic conference. What else do we have? Veterinary medicine. Athletic team, the Panthers. It's not the Panthers, it's the Cyclones. I don't know if I caught all the issues. Of course, you can always run the programs yourself. That green run button, like we'll be showing in class, does run the program. For this one, it won't tell you anything other than it's printing out what we have it specified to print out. But then we can also run the program by hitting that run test button here. And now when we do that, we get that green passed result here, which is what we want. And it should say there's no actual difference here. So I said there was 3 parts you have to do to actually submit this program correctly. The code has to be correct. Check. We're done. We have to pass all the tests. So we have to have all those green passed symbols there. Done. We then have to actually submit the program in this Replit platform that we have here. That is in the upper right-hand corner under Submit. This will submit your Replit for review and notify the team's admins. Assuming you've passed all the tests, you should go ahead and hit Submit. You can always resubmit. It doesn't commit you to saying my program is 100% done when you hit Submit, but that does get us to the point of saying, yes, it is done. We're still not at a point where we have a code we can copy paste into Canvas, but now if we go back to our main Replit page here, and you sometimes would have to refresh that when that happens, we should now see in our student view here for our main Replit page, now we have for pp01.01, you can continue working, but there's also now this option of fork solution. Great. You're going to want to click that when you're ready to generate the code. We are using this quote unquote solution term not really to mean here's the solution for the assignment. If you ever want to see my code for any of these, I'd be happy to share after you've submitted and gotten credit for your own version of it. This solution is what we're using to generate a unique code associated with your submission. So this program isn't doing that much. It's basically taking a bit of a fingerprint of your program, of your runtime environment. It also asks for your ISU net ID, and it generates a unique submission code for you, which is what you're then going to want to copy paste into Canvas to submit and receive credit for that program. So you don't actually need to look at this code. You're welcome to. You can look at the instructions, which really just say hit the green run button and enter in your net ID. The example they give is John Doe for your net ID. It's whatever is your name or whatever your email address is without the at iastate.edu. Mine is example is Zambrino, so I can type that in here. And then it's going to generate your unique submission code for PP01.01 is the following. Be sure to copy paste this entire code into the Canvas submission. That is correct. That is what I want you to do. I would highlight it all. For me, at least on my computer, I right click and select copy, and that does seem to work. My recommendation to you, though, so you don't have to keep going back to these and regenerating the code, is just to throw that into a Google document as well. I would leave a little note here that this one is for PP01.01 submission code or something like that, just so you can keep track of it, and then you'll have room for the next one, and we can look at the next one really briefly as well. But when it comes time then to submit this via Canvas, you're going to want to copy paste that code again, either directly from the Replit window or from this page of notes that you've kept handy. And you're going to put that code into the corresponding location for that programming practice assignment for that quiz. Copy paste that entire code in there. And because you're allowed to resubmit as much as you'd like for these, you can either wait until you're entirely done, or you can actually do them one by one. I would probably personally just wait. There's not any ambiguity here. You get your code working, you generate the submission code, you will get credit for those programs. To proceed to the next assignment, you at least have to get 2 of the 5 working. But if you're really finding yourself stuck on maybe the 5th out of 5 and you know you're really close, but you're using a lot more time than you really wanted to dedicate towards that part of the assignment, you can submit and just move on at that point. That part is up to you. Personally, I would want to get as much as possible done and then submit. But for purposes of illustration, we've copy pasted that first code here. We can hit submit, and it will tell you you haven't submitted the other ones. But as we hit submit here, it should actually tell us you did get a point. Okay, and that is as expected. And as we then work on the second program and start that, fix that one, generate that code, you should also then get a point for that second one as well. We can briefly take a look at the second one and then we can end this video here. First one was ISU facts. Second one is called buggy code. And we'll generate this project, get this one started. Also is just a printf program that is just trying to print out some information. Has a syntactical error in it and is asking you to fix that syntactical error. We haven't learned C programming yet, but the editor actually kind of helps you along the way. It's doing some red highlighting here, and it actually kind of tells you the error. Hey, expected a semicolon after expression. C is very sensitive to syntax, and I think if we go through and add those semicolons to each of these for PP01.02, that is going to fix that problem. We could hit the run button and confirm that we fixed it. In fact, we haven't. We missed one at the very end here. We've fixed then all of our syntactical issues here. Usually it's important as you have a syntax error to kind of just go one bug at a time. If you have 50 bugs, maybe it's not as bad as all that. You fix the first one, recompile. Fix the second one, recompile. Eventually you'll get it. Then we can also then go back to the unit test and run the unit test. That should pass if I've done my job correctly. Pass window. As I mentioned, it's pretty sensitive. If I just were to add an additional space between the first 2 words and what I wanted to print out here, logically it's still very similar, but now when I run the test, it will fail. It'll tell you where it failed. Hey, you have an extra space right here, and that's exactly what that difference is trying to tell you here, but it will catch it. It will not be considered correct for that purpose. We change it back, we run it, we pass all the tests, we submit PP01.02 here, and then we can go back. It's been submitted. We go back to our main page. In my experience, again, you go back to the main page, you sometimes have to refresh it for it to recognize you've actually submitted something or completed something. We then fork the solution now for PP01.02. And again, as we do this solution code, they're all identical. The solution codes, they're not actually the solution for that program. They're not my code for the program. They're just a way of generating this Canvas submission key. And let's say you're John Doe at iastate.edu. You would then hit that, generate your code. Personally, as I mentioned, I do just recommend having it ready to go in your Word document or your notes file or wherever you keep track of the notes for the course. And then you can go back into your Canvas quiz. Let's take it again. It should still have the history of the previous one. And if it doesn't, well, good thing that you have that document open where you saved those codes. They haven't disappeared. They're still there in Replit. You can still rerun that submission program, that solution program in Replit. We now go to submit. We haven't done 3, 4, 5, but we should have gotten our 2 points for questions 1 and 2. The process is exactly the same for each of these programs. I'll provide this video before you get started on each of those assignments, but it's the same exact video you would be watching. Please let me know, as always, if you have any questions with this process. This part is a number of extra steps, but it should give you instant feedback that you've done your program correctly and you're going to get the points that each program is worth in Canvas. Good luck with this. Let me know where you get stuck, and I look forward to seeing your programs.